Hello, everyone, and welcome back to DWG TV. I'm Hannah, and today I'm joined by the Director of Social Media at Edible Arrangements, Matt Courtoy. So today we're going to be chatting about social media marketing, how the industry has evolved, where it's headed, and how you can really use social media to build your brand. So without further ado, Matt, if you want to introduce yourself, share a little bit about what it is that you do at Edible Arrangements.
Yeah, so I handle all of the social and a large part of the digital strategy for the brand for Edible Arrangements. I'm sure most everyone's familiar. If you're not, Edible Arrangements is sort of like a floral bouquet, but it's made completely out of edible stuff like fruit. And so we have a thriving e-commerce business. So a lot of our customer base is done online. Very quick to go to the website, order something that you need and have it delivered to friends, loved ones, whatever. We also have 1,200 retail locations. So a large part of our business is figuring out how to drive consumers in to pick up either arrangements, fruit platters, or just simple treats like smoothies and dipped fruit, just sort of as a pick-me-up. So that it's sort of a two-pronged business between e-commerce and the retail side. So I handle the strategy for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest. We've started to do a few things on YouTube, even LinkedIn. Sometimes we have Edible for Business that we use quite a bit. So we touch basically all the major social platforms. We've done a few advertising campaigns on things like Reddit as well. So we're starting to get into more. They're not really burgeoning, but when you consider the big three like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, then things like Reddit are, I guess, technically burgeoning. So we developed channel strategy that's specific for all those platforms. So we challenge ourselves pretty regularly to not use the same content across all, to sort of speak to the different audiences that use the different platforms in a unique way that's unique to the brand, to always stay within the brand voice and have a unique look and feel across all those platforms. So that is, in a nutshell, what I do.
Cool. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So how did you come into this role? Have you always worked in social media?
So social media has definitely been an aspect of my career, like from along the way. So I've been in various forms of marketing, promotions, and social industries now for about 18 years. So I started in radio. And I started using social when I was in promotions at a radio station to get people to come to our events or to listen to whatever our shows or whatever we had going on. And back then we used MySpace. So our radio station, which was 99X in Atlanta, we were one of the first radio stations to utilize MySpace to pump out new music or to talk to people about events, or even use it as a contesting technique to get them into concerts or our private meet and greets and that sort of thing. I was there for about 7 years, and then I moved to the agency side for an entertainment-based agency working on mostly major motion pictures in the Southeast. So to get people into advanced screenings of movies to build word of mouth before the release. So when I was there, I took my learnings from using things like MySpace. Then as I was starting my career there, Facebook became public. It was no longer just for students only. Twitter became a thing. WordPress was around, so we used that to sort of as an added value for our clients as a way to pump out things about a new trailer that dropped or advanced screenings and that sort of thing. So then I was there for a few years, and one of the promo partners that I worked on for a film called The Lorax was Whole Foods Market. So I worked with the Southeast Whole Foods marketing team on the release of The Lorax. And while I was there, I got to talk to them and I got to know them. And they had a position on their Southeast marketing team. At first, it was a general position, so working on in-store events in some of their markets. But then the national team was building out their social and digital strategy, and they wanted someone in each region to head that up. So then I transitioned to completely doing social and digital then. Back then it was mostly organic, so the game has changed quite a bit. but I oversaw the content strategy for Facebook, Twitter, and started on Instagram. Instagram started as I started my career there, and Yelp and email for the Whole Foods markets in the Southeast, so 35 markets across the Southeast, with the exception of Florida. I was there for about 3 years until a job opportunity opened up at Focus Brands. So Focus Brands has now 7 franchise-based businesses. So I joined the team to head up social for Slotchkeys. And along the way, I started working on the Carvel ice cream team and Mo Southwest Grill as well. So I worked on those 3 brands while I was there for about 3 years, and moved to Edible Arrangements about 5 or 6 months ago.
Wow, that's a really impressive resume.
It's fun. It's been a really fun thing. I love pop culture, entertainment, and food. So it's really great to work on things that you're like super passionate about in real life. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So what does a day in the life of Matt look like today at Edible Arrangements?
Yeah, so we have a lot to do. So we have, myself along with our social media manager, Hannah, we work on all the channel strategy. So we will brainstorm content usually a month out, and then we schedule photo shoots. We get those shoots on the table and we will do various either still photos, stop motion, or video. And then once those are completed, then we size them, we schedule them, we write copy with our copywriter, Patrick. And then the 3 of us sort of plan out the content for the month. And then we also use that content and say, hey, can this work on things like email? Can this work on our blog? And so we sort of figure out sort of a channel strategy for it. We also have 1,200 locations, and those 1,200 locations have their own local Facebook pages. And so we help keep up with just the maintenance on that. And then community management is a large part of it as well. So responding to our guests and customers as fast as possible to get sort of any guest relations issues or like positive feedback to the franchisees to take care of in a timely fashion. So that's it. We have a pretty big marketing team. We have our in-house creative team. And so we're very cross-functional. We're very collaborative. So any given day we're pulled into various different projects that, social touches, and social is a large part of the way that we reach our consumers now. So we're involved in almost every aspect of the marketing business these days.
Awesome. Yeah. It's crazy how much goes into just social media, just one post, how many people are working on just one post for one platform. So what does it look like for Edible Arrangements creating a social strategy for each of your individual platforms? I know you mentioned that you like to not just post the same things on all of your social platforms. What does that look like?
It's challenging. When Hannah and I joined the team, it was very much just all across the board using the same content. This happens with a lot of brands, so it's not really like there's like no disrespect, but like they didn't even resize the content. Like it was just like the same photo over and over. And people use different platforms, and the platforms all have different dimensions and different specs. And so a lot of it was just like figuring out, hey, if the focus is on the center of the frame in this like vertical shot, how do we then can we resize it to use it for horizontal for something like Twitter, or do we have to shoot a net new piece? And how do our guests use Twitter? And is that why they come to Edible Arrangements? So a lot of it was just sort of figuring out just general specs and how people use it, and then building in that tone. The tone of voice is essential. So we can't use the same line on Twitter that we use on Instagram or even on Facebook. So we have to take the lines, and we have to make them sometimes less sassy if we're going on Instagram, more engaging if we're going on Facebook. And then we're really starting to get into, with some of our summer campaigns, how we approach Pinterest and utilizing our sort of status as fruit experts in a very like fruit centric part of the year, like
Yeah.
now that it's summer and everyone's having like backyard barbecues and pool parties, like fruit is an essential part of that.
Yeah.
And so we're figuring out like how we make ourselves an essential part of their summer party planning experience.
Yeah. So what is your opinion on posting and scheduling content ahead of time versus posting in real time? Do you feel like there's a time and place for both? How do you feel about that?
I think scheduling is really the way to go.
Yeah.
I think that like there are time and place to jump into proactive conversations. I think the Facebook and Instagram algorithm has basically killed real-time marketing on those two platforms. So I could post something right now, and a large part of our consumer base may not even see it until tomorrow. So if we're commenting on something that's happening in pop culture, it may not be, we may intend for it to be in real time, but that's not the way that works in the feed. So we have to lean on things like Instagram stories and in Twitter still. Twitter, I love Twitter. I get when people don't like it, but I still love it. And just from the real time nature, we're still figuring out the voice of the brand and when we can jump in and when it's appropriate. So we've had a lot of conversations about that and how we interact with people in real time. So, if we were going to do it, it was going to be somewhere like Twitter or Instagram stories. So we schedule a lot of our content based around when the peak hours of engagement are anyway, because we're still trying, we still post organically and we're still trying to make it work, even though it's getting increasingly harder to make things work on an organic basis.
So how does Edible Arrangements use social media to delight its audience and really get them excited about your brand?
It's something we talk about quite a bit, actually. We had a meeting yesterday to kind of talk about like what our approach to summer is. And so we're doing something that we are internally calling Summer of Surprises. And so, part of the best thing about the brand is that it is a surprise and delight brand. People get edible arrangements when they're not expecting it or when they're celebrating something fun. Also when they're, when things are happening in their life that are not so great, we're also a part of that. But like leaning into the surprise and delight is something that now that we are starting to get a better footing of the voice and our content strategy, how we bring that to life for more surprise and delight. So you'll see us, like if you follow the brand throughout the end of the summer, like going into early fall and back to school, you'll start to see us do more things where we do these little surprise and delight things where it may be like we drop a coupon code that's only like, it's 100% off, but only 3 people can use it, so the first 3 that get there can use it. Or we may do like a pay it forward where if someone buys an arrangement, we may send a free arrangement to one of their friends, and then so on and so on until we hit like 30 or something like that. So we're going to play around with that and just the surprise and delight nature of the brand and how it comes to life in social.
Cool. That's awesome. So how do you recommend handling negative feedback, negative comments, bad reviews on social media?
So it's always important to acknowledge them first and foremost, unless they're like profane or derogatory in any way. And we try not to ban people or delete posts unless they're just super profane or, like that. And that happens from time to time. The first thing is to publicly acknowledge it and then shift it offline so we can gather more information to sort of get it rectified as soon as possible. It's difficult when you have a franchise model. Some franchisees are super responsive and some, are a little bit slower. So we always have to try to like set customer expectations because we live in a world where people want an immediate response or an immediate refund or an immediate product delivery to their house. So it can be difficult. So, just setting expectations and openly communicating, hey, this may take 3 to 5 business days. And like most people get it. Some people, depending on how upset they are, don't get it. But for the most part, we try our best to be as open and communicative as possible.
Yeah.
I think the other kind of essential thing is to try your best to keep it on the platform that they're comfortable with. If they contact you on Facebook, try to keep it on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
I found that people get really frustrated when if they engage with you on Facebook and then you try to make them email you or
Right.
call you. Like I've noticed that people tend to, want to stay on the platform that they feel comfortable
Yeah.
on. So we try our best to accommodate that whenever possible.
Yeah. That's a really good tip. So, what changes or challenges have you seen in the social media world over the past 3 years?
And the shift to paid
Yeah.
has been pretty tough. I mean, you used to be able to hang with any of your competitors, no matter what their budget is from on an organic standpoint, if you just had like great creative or good copy. And now it's just getting impossible. Like you reach about 1% of your audience at the most with any organic stuff. So having to shift to paid and convincing, not just at Edible, but this works for other brands that I've worked on, just convincing them to make social a bigger part of the marketing strategy and budget.
Yeah.
That's been one of the biggest challenges. I think people are mostly get it now, but it was a very uphill battle 3 years ago for sure.
Mm. So, where do you see the industry headed? What do you think are going to be the key areas of social media marketing platforms that are really going to blow up in the coming years?
I think, I think it's already sort of happening now, but brands as a voice, brands having a unique voice
Yeah.
is pretty key. Like having just a unique sort of approach. I like when brands are humanized. Like some people
Mm-hmm.
don't, but I personally like it. I like it when it's in first person over third
Mm-hmm.
person or whatever. So I think that's it. I think like the way that we target people gets increasingly sometimes scary, but also like very effective.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be the big push is how we, like how you better segment your audience and reach people with different content based on what their needs are.
Yeah. So, for a business or organization that's really struggling to gain traction on social media, where would you recommend they start?
I think you carve out some sort of paid budget.
Okay.
And I think you can, depending on what your needs are, if it's B2B, then maybe you look at LinkedIn. We've had varying amounts of success with LinkedIn, but you can't really beat the targeting capabilities of Facebook and
Mm-hmm.
Facebook's integration with Instagram. Like if you have a product that is worthy of Instagram, then it's very easy to place very targeted ads to reach a certain demographic and certain people in a certain area. So if a business is struggling, I would say first and foremost, like forget trying to reach people organically. Stop trying to grow how many likes you have because it doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's to carve out some sort of money so you can play around with the advertising aspect of
Yeah.
social. And then, like don't sink all of your money into it. Make it part of your media mix at first. And
Mm-hmm.
then as you start to see results, then you can shift more money accordingly.
Yeah.
Don't just like shift everything out of traditional and just go all digital, because if
Mm-hmm.
you don't have a good understanding of who your customer is and what your targeting looks like, then you could essentially lose a lot of money. So just make it a small part of your mix and then beef it up as you start to see some results.
Yeah. I think that's awesome advice. So, transitioning a bit, for everyone I interview, I like to ask some rapid fire questions just to get to know you better. So, we'll get into that. So, my first question is, what is your favorite social media platform and why?
So I love Twitter. I really I still ride for Twitter.
Hmm.
Twitter is just the way I get all my information. Like I
Yeah.
can like it just is delivered to me relatively quickly and effectively. I can spend 5 minutes scrolling through and I can catch up on what's going on in the world, what's going on in the industry, what's going on in the NBA, whatever, and see it like at a glance. I love the interactiveness of Instagram stories, and that's something that we're playing around with the brand quite a bit.
Hmm.
I feel like largely people have shifted now that Instagram went so heavily into like Snapchat's territory. The way that they've sort of programmed people to go to stories first and then they may not even make it to the feed anymore is
Yeah.
kind of like really really like game changing.
Yeah.
So Twitter is my favorite, and then Instagram, and like I have a love-hate relationship with Facebook for all the reasons we mentioned earlier. Like the targeting is awesome, but it's also like super invasive sometimes. So I've found myself less and less personally on things like Facebook, and even Instagram, and just I personally still use Twitter kind of all the time, but that's how I break it down from on a personal level.
Cool. If you could only follow 3 social media accounts, what would they be?
Okay, this is a good question, and I haven't really thought it out.
On the spot.
So the first one is this guy. I'm really into, more so rather than brands, I'm into voices. So mainly people. I don't know that there is a brand really that has a strong voice as a person, but I think that there's this guy, Shea Serrano. He's a writer. I believe he's based in Houston, but he's an awesome writer. I've read all of his books, but he also writes for a website called The Ringer. But on social, he uses his platform for a lot of like comedic effect around like movies and pop culture and things like the NBA. But he also uses it for good. He has this thing called the FOH Army. Like, you can go look it up. I won't tell you what FOH means if you don't know. But he has this thing called the FOH Army, and like when he sees people in need, like he rallies his followers unlike anyone I've ever seen. So if he sees like a school teacher that needs school supplies, he will post a GoFundMe. He will regularly show screenshots of all the GoFundMe like money coming in. So like there's like this like accountability like tracking. So he does that on the regular, and like I love stuff like that. And so he'll raise like $10,000 for someone that needed like $500 worth of $500 worth of school supplies or something like that. So the way he uses it for good. It's really really powerful to me. I think Chrissy Teigen is also like super fun to follow. We look at a lot of her content when we're shaping the content that we do, because she's so approachable, but also like aspirational at the same time. So she definitely like walks that line. I think, let's see, the last one that I would follow. It's a good question. Geez, I'm blanking on the third.
It can be 2.
I don't know. Those 2 would be pretty solid.
Those are good ones.
Yeah.
What are you currently reading or listening to?
I listen to a lot of podcasts. So let's see, what are my favorites? I have a schedule, which is really like,
I love that.
This is really nerdy stuff, but like on Monday, I typically listen to WTF in the morning commute with Mark Maron. And then on the afternoon, my favorite podcast is called The Watch. It's on Mondays and Thursdays. So you typically listen to that on the commute back. On Tuesdays, I'm blanking on my schedule now. But I listened to You Made It Weird with Pete Holmes. That one's on Wednesday for sure. Mark Maron's WTF is on Thursday. And then I listen to Armchair Experts sometimes, Fresh Air. I listen to a lot of different like pop culture. I love like interviews with creative people. There's one called Reply All that's awesome. It's mostly about the internet. There's one that I listen to that's it's called Tea Time, but it's a bunch of Gen Zs. So I find it kind of hard to relate, but they talk about things that may not be on my radar as like a Gen X / millennial, older millennial. So I listen to a lot of that stuff. I consume a lot of content about like creative people, because I'm always interested in like how they got started and like what drives them and what motivates them and that sort of thing.
Yeah. That's my favorite question to ask, because I'm obsessed with podcasts. So I love to get new recommendations. So what is the best career advice you've ever received?
I think the best career advice that I don't know that I received this. I think I just sort of learned this on my own. But it's all about relationships. Every job that I've ever had I've gotten based on a relationship that I've had. So when I got in the door at radio just by taking on an additional unpaid internship straight out of college, and got my foot in the door, and then stayed in radio through a couple of different layoffs, always because everyone knew that I worked hard and that how passionate I was. And when I was ready to get out of radio, it was someone that I'd worked with on the agency side through the radio station that was like, hey, this may not be the job for you, but you can try it out. So that then I transitioned to the film industry, then met the Whole Foods people through that job. So it's always been like, it's all been about relationships. So I think the best career advice that I can have is don't burn bridges, like everybody has a different personality, a different work style. And so like, it's just super important to remember that not everything is for you. Right. Yeah. So if you find yourself troubled by a job or troubled by coworkers or a boss or whatever, like remember their style is completely different. And that like, it is a big world, but it's very, very small, and industries are very, very small. So there's a good chance that if you stay in the same industry, you'll likely cross paths with people again. So it's essential that you don't burn bridges, and that you try to make the best of it, because like, things have a way of typically working themselves out.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And my last question is, who inspires you?
My wife and my kids, for sure. Those are probably the biggest ones. I mean, just like, I think like anyone that has, anything that has a family, like knows that, like, it's especially like I have 2 kids, so a 7-year-old and an almost 5-year-old. So there's never a dull moment. So you have to be like on your feet a lot. And so like seeing the world, especially through my kids' eyes, and seeing how they have to cope with things and like how they have to do things on their own is like super inspiring. And seeing how they're sensitive, but they're also like resilient, is like super inspiring. And then I have like a ton of, mostly like most of my bosses from the past have been like real heroes for me, mostly because they took a chance on me, when I might not have been the best fit for a job. So like my old program director, Leslie Fram at 99X, and then my old boss, Carolyn Sloss, and just like basically anyone that's ever hired me. Like, those are my heroes, because are like, oh, they saw something in me, even if like it didn't work out, like that's equally, there's something equally impressive to learn from things that just don't work in your favor, or just aren't the right fit too. So those are my, those are the people I admire.
Cool. I love it. So that's all the questions I have, other than where can people go to learn more about Edible Arrangements, follow along with y'all, see what kind of specials y'all have?
Yeah. So we're at Edible Arrangements on Facebook and Instagram. We're at Edible on Twitter. So that's where you can find us. And if you're on Pinterest, we're currently Do Fruit. But we'll have a more edible friendly handle in the future. But and then you can follow me on Twitter at Utah Give Me Two, on Twitter and Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here, Matt. This was such a good conversation. It was even like a little personal mentoring session for me about social media. So I really appreciate it, and think our followers are going to get a lot of insight out of this conversation. So thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in today. Be sure to follow along with us to see when we'll be going live next. And until then, have a good day. And I hope that you put these social media tips into use for your business and organization. Thanks, guys. Bye.